So in last week's episode, we discussed that 612 was growing and had reached this place after a lot of work that felt a bit more stable. So can you describe what that looked like when it became this kind of textbook success story in terms of revenue and retail touch points? What was that phase like?
Yeah, so after we raised private equity and we started growing in multiple directions, so we reached a major landmark. That is when we crossed a 100 crore revenue mark. At that point of time, we had almost 500 plus point of sales across the country, and we had different. We had started serving the younger age group. We started with 6 to 12 years old, and then we had a baby range as well. So in a way, we were kind of really creating, we were creating an umbrella of product lines, and it was really good to see in whichever city that we used to go to, that you have some presence either through your own store or at one of these modern retail outlets. So it really felt good.
So, what did that success feel like on a deeper level? Was it ever intimidating because it would be the first time that you're seeing these big numbers and dealing with these big clients and partners? So, what was that like?
So I think at one point it is very satisfying to see that you've kind of reached where you wanted to reach, and you've been able to create such a massive brand which is touching a lot of people on a day-to-day level. But at the same time, you feel that you are entering a certain dangerous territory. And why I call it dangerous, because it's very easy to stop looking at fundamentals when you've achieved a certain level of success, and when you are seeing the bigger picture, you start missing some of these smaller fundamental things that really are required to create and run a business.
Okay, but let's go back a bit. So, once you got that private equity, how is that money actually used to make this growth happen? So, what were the things that were happening in that time frame?
Yeah, so at that point of time, we realized that the whole retail growth was coming from what we call the modern retail. And when I say modern retail, it is basically the department store formats which were coming up. So we started off with Shoppers Stop, who liked our range and the whole story that we had brought to them. And from Shoppers Stop, Reliance was also investing a lot in retail. So Reliance Trends was coming up. Then the Future Group had Central Stores, Brand Factory. So a lot of these Globers, so a lot of these department store formats we were able to penetrate, and we were able to create a shop and shop with them. So
Okay.
and as they grew, we grew with them. And at one point, of course, the online retail also started happening when Flipkart and Myntra came, and Jabong came into the picture. So we also try to align and onboard our products online as well.
When we spoke in one of the last episodes, you had mentioned this idea of beauty mantra that never followed through, and because there was this rising focus on e-commerce. So was that in the back of your head when these decisions were being made about department stores and when you were introducing 612 to these physical stores?
I think the situation had changed a lot since then. So during Beauty Mantra days, .com was a new thing. I mean, only what was exciting was to make websites. But after that, we had started seeing commerce being taking shape online. So we knew going beyond the websites, like we had a lot of websites that we used to book hotels to with, and even air tickets and everything. So online business had already taken shape. So this was, of course, to sell a product, especially garments, through online was a new thing, but still it was, I would say that we could see the shape of things that was coming. So it was, I think we were more prepared for it at this point
Okay.
of time.
And then with modern retail, did you feel like there was anything wrong? Because on paper, this sounds like super smooth sailing. You got in with the big retailers and you were able to enter those markets pretty easily. So, what was there any red flags that you saw?
Yes, I think because most of this modern retail, while on the one hand provides you a very good growth platform, because you do not need to invest too much money in the hard assets like fixed assets because they bring in the infrastructure. But what they do is that we work on a model, a business model called the SOR model, which is the sale or return model. So that was something which was a kind of a point of concern for us, because what it actually just in layman terms, it means that it is sale or return, means that whatever you sell through them, whatever gets unsold at the store level comes back to you. So it's a sale, or if it is not sold, it is returned to you. So there is a lot of risk of return and receivables getting blocked, etc.
So, what are, in simple words, the actual implications of this model for people watching who wouldn't understand the
Yeah, so the
operations?
main so financial implications are huge. What it means is that till the stocks are sold, you do not get your money, which means that a lot of money remains blocked in the inventory which is lying there. So only when it starts selling, after a month, the account is settled every month. So whatever you sell is what you get. So the money equivalent to what you sell after deducting margins and all you sell. So in a way, you're dependent on the sale at that store, and so you are, and your receivables and your money is then tied to their, so I mean how the store is performing, and so in a way your fate is in their hands. So you
Okay.
don't own the customers, and a lot of working capital gets deployed at the store levels.
So you're mentioning this level of dependency that exists, and then I know that Reliance Trends contributed to 40% of your revenue, which seems like there's even more dependency on them. And if your performance is dependent on how the store is performing, what does that mean? Was that ever scary to you to know that this much of
Yes,
your
so yeah, so I think so that was one thing, but that was how the country's retail landscape was shaping up. The Reliance was one of the primary players in that segment, and they were the ones which are actually witnessing the highest growth. So it's really, I would say, difficult to say no to growth. Although theoretically, I would still say that yes, putting too much at stake with one, channel or partner is always a risky proposition. I would always say that. But when you are seeing growth, that is one of the dangers that I was talking about. Is that when you are seeing growth, you feel that overpowers or overrides every other concern.
So let me ask you this, knowing what you know now, if you went back in time and you were in that decision making position again, what is something you would do differently? Would you try to create more revenue channels and maybe more private revenue channels through your own brand, or what would be like the way to move forward in
Yeah.
that situation?
So I think the key to retail and to key to branded apparel business is to kind of really own your own customers. I mean, so you need to interact directly with your customers. And now, if you look at the last 5 or 7 years, D2C, I mean, direct to consumer, is what most of the new brands have done and are doing. And I think that is the right approach, because somewhere at the end of the day, the consumer should be looking for your brand, instead of finding it convenient to go to the nearest, whatever department store that they are used to going, and then buying whatever is available there. So I would definitely now say that you have to build a strong D2C presence before you actually move in other directions.
I also remember when like 612 stores were opening in malls and stuff. Specifically, there's one big one in Mall of India. There was a bit of innovation that you were trying to do.
Yeah.
There was some form of genie that was created to kind of help the shopping experience, which now has really taken off. I mean, now whenever you go to an online website, you can basically like try on clothes online, and that's kind of something that you were looking at then. So, can you explain what
Yeah.
that was and
Yeah, so actually, so we were always trying to create some innovation in either the process or in terms of engaging with the consumer. So one of the things that we came across and we really adapted to was concept of we built a wonder store, which is basically a virtual store. Now again, this was way back, I think in 2016 or 17, before virtual try-ons were actually They had just started taking shape. So what we had done was we had installed a kind of a monitor in all our stores, and even in the mall that you were speaking about, and some others, where customers could come, and a child standing in front of that screen could actually, just by the swipe of his hand, try out various garments on himself or herself. It was a very exciting thing. I do regret that we did not follow it up on that, because we did try. It did not result in commerce per se, because I think it required a lot of training at the counter level for the staff who's handling it, who should be able to kind of really ask customers to tell them the benefits of that kind of a thing. Yes, but we did try such innovations because we wanted to bring out something unique and something differentiating.
So I think then the big question becomes that there are areas of growth like this, which now you think would have made a lot of sense because it's where the world was moving. And then there's opportunities of growth with Reliance per se, which maybe you would have wanted to now say no to or hold back on a bit. So when does one and how does one actually decide when to say yes and when to say no? And I think this is a very relevant question, especially for like people who are my age as well, because when you're actively taking on new opportunities, whether that's applying to a job or applying to college, there could be a college that has a great brand name, but may not be the best for what you want to study, or may not fit you the best because you want to go to a smaller school where you get more like one-on-one attention, which you wouldn't get at a huge school, or the other way around. So in these situations, there's a lot of decisions like that where you have to factor in different things. And on the surface level, sometimes you tend to focus on the brand name or the value or whatever. So how would you say these decisions
Yeah,
should
so
be
I
made?
think this is a very, very tough one. When you see something right in front of your eyes and you feel that, okay, this is something which is what you in your mind is a growth or a success, you tend to take it at the, rather than risk that and do something which in the long run could be beneficial for you. One, of course, you don't, now you're talking about benefit of hindsight. So at that time, maybe you don't even realize that that is, there is something more
Yes.
beneficial. That is real life. I mean, so I won't say that. But having said that, I would now say that, um, especially in the case of businesses, there is always this dilemma about growth versus long-term sustainability. And I would now, given what happened later, I mean, and we'll come to the COVID part of the business, where come run into a situation which you could never imagine. I think it always would pay to have a view or take a action which will create long-term sustainability. And in this case, long-term sustainability did mean that we had, as I said, diversification, more D2C channels, etc. Uh, Similarly, in the your age group, and if college or jobs, or you would come across such situations time and again, I think that's where mentorship or guidance or talking to someone with experience will come in handy. A lot of opportunities look very, very exciting on paper at that point of time, but depending on your goals and what what is your temperament, your attitude, what is it that you want from life, I think it's always better to discuss it with people who are well wishers and who have some experience and who can actually share that experience with
And do
you.
you think that Cohesive Minds is able to bridge that gap for business learners, especially where they're trying to kind of figure out how to approach these kind of issues?
So I think so. Cohesive Minds does two things. One, of course, it does very, very practical skill building. So there are a lot of decisions which you take without having adequate knowledge and operational knowledge. So that is a gap which Cohesive Minds builds very effortlessly, because we are building those financial skill building platforms. So at least you should have those skills to assess what you are doing. Are you doing fine? How should you do better? Is this the right decision? So all those questions will be answered by Cohesive Minds through the learning platform. Apart from that, we are also the entrepreneurship masterclass that we are soon be launching, which is based on what we are discussing now, is learnings from my journey, and then we are in the process of getting more people to share experiences, especially those experiences which did not achieve what they were setting out to achieve. As I said, there are a lot of stories which you will get about success, about how people made their unicorns, how people really were able to, create successful businesses. And I think that is a path which is very standard. I think what is not standard and what you need to learn is what from people who did not actually end up doing what they are doing. So it's actually what not to do and what to watch out for. And I think that's what we are trying to bring in here in our entrepreneurship section that we are developing.
So bouncing off of that, if you had to now look back at this time frame that we're discussing in 612, would you say that this is kind of where it all began to go wrong? Was this the beginning of the end for 612? And is that something you only realize now, or could you feel it happening at that point as well?
So I think, philosophically speaking, whenever things are at their best is obviously when they start going bad. In the sense that if you already feel that you are at a position which is what you had envisaged, you kind of, as I said, start overlooking smaller things. So the things we could see that this growth of the retail model that we had adopted, which was coming with that SOR, so the working capital deployment, and it was increasingly as we grew, it required more money, and that now I would say should have been a kind of a red flag for us that is this growth sustainable. So at that point of time there could have been corrections which were taken. Not that at that point of time it did not make it was making sense, because that's how we were trying to gain market share and really establish ourselves. But yes, I think as I said, entrepreneurship is always about decision making at each point of time. There were other options that one could have taken.
So, what was your, to end this and share with the listeners, what was your biggest learning from this experience? We've talked about a lot of professional learnings, but maybe something more personal in terms, something you carry with you even now.
I think, yeah, so, I would say that as an entrepreneur or in real life, I think you need to come out of your that the boundaries that you've set yourself, and whatever you're doing, try to assess that as an outsider. If you cannot do that, take help of an outsider to view it. I think that is one of the critical things that you should do, because sometimes you get so immersed in what you're doing, you feel everything that you're doing is right. And I think the same point we mentioned, I think in the episode 1 also, when while taking the decision of getting into entrepreneurship also, it was that I had been largely successful in academics, so I thought I am doing the right thing. So it's always, if you can take a step back and become an outsider to yourself, that's the best thing. If you cannot do, take advice, and then take some form of experience into your real life. That will really help.
Thank you. I think that's relevant for everyone in any decision making phase of their life.